Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Leadership Lessons podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Williams. This is a ministry of EEleaders to encourage and equip you as you serve the Lord in whatever context and wherever part of the globe at this time you are serving God at. I pray that the Lord would bless you, would keep you, and make his face shine upon you. We are here to support and encourage you and to connect you with global leaders around the world that are doing the same thing you're doing, serving Jesus in their ministry context. And this is a podcast to have preachers preach to preachers. Does that make sense? Sometimes I don't rant too much. We don't have a conversation. I have asked friends of mine and people that I'm learning from to share lessons that they've learned from the Lord to share to you. One church leader to another church leader. So we do it in multiple ways, in short form, one piece of advice videos, in leadership lessons, long form, 25-minute videos, or just an interview style through the Patreon conversations and interviews that we have. And so today's episode, we try to put these things together and have a theme. And today's theme is different environments because we're going to be talking about traveling and going to different places to learn from what the Lord has to teach us. I think as many adults, we understand the importance of vacations, of going somewhere. We even see in the Bible, Jeremiah, the prophet, the God told him, hey, go over here to the potter so I could teach you something. Now, he could have just shared that lesson with Jeremiah, but he wanted to go to a different location. And oftentimes going to a different place, a different location helps us get perspective, right? A different place gives us a different perspective. And so in today's episode, I want to talk to you about making different spaces, environments for discipleship. And we have for us today on the leadership lesson, Trey from Christian Expeditions. He was a pastor, a leader, and God placed on his heart to actually work and help a company take different pastors and groups of people around the world so they can make the Bible come alive to them. He works for Christian Expeditions, and they're a sponsor of this podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Christian Expeditions. They help bring the Bible into life, and he actually planned a trip that I was a part of, and wanted him to be a sponsor for this podcast. I even asked him to share a leadership lesson because I thought it was a very important subject and something that we could be thinking about. How do we make different environment spaces for people? We may not be able to bring them to Israel like Christian Expeditions does, but how do we bring them into an environment, practicing hospitality, the warm space, whatever it may be, to get them to Jesus? And what I love about Trey and his heart as he organizes and serves and works with multiple churches and denominations all over the world to bring them these experiences, he's able to testify that it's made a huge difference in people's lives. And so what can we do as church leaders to make a difference in people's lives, giving them space, giving them retreats, having them go to a different place? And what I think is interesting is when you're young, maybe a high school student, you go on a summer camp and you experience this great time with the Lord because you're out of your context, a different place, gives you perspective, and God does a great work. And then when you become an adult, you never get to experience that a lot. You don't go on like retreats or conferences a lot. Sometimes your conferences are work conferences or training, but just seeking the Lord and being able to learn and grow. It's such a cool thing and such a cool ministry. So we're really grateful. If you want to learn more about Christian Expeditions, you can go to christianexpeditions.com. You can reach out to Trey at christianexpeditions.com. But I just ask him to share, hey, give us some perspective, do a leadership lesson, even talk about why and how that is important for us as church leaders to know this principle of a different place. It creates a different space, creates a different perspective. You teach us that and just give us a little bit of perspective of your end because you experienced it so much. And so here's Trey Brennan, his leadership lesson, and we'll get right into it, talking about different environments and how important they are in making disciples.
Hey everyone, so excited to be on the Leadership Lessons podcast. My name is Trey Brennan, and I'm from Christian Expedition. And Christian Expedition is a company that brings believers to places that are important to our faith, like Israel and Greece and Turkey are some of the biggest ones. Today I'm going to be sharing a leadership lesson about taking your people somewhere. And I wanted to first say that I obviously really believe in the importance of doing that. I devote my entire working life at the moment to bringing believers to a place, and that is because I believe that it's extremely important to do it, extremely valuable when it comes to discipleship. And I hope to persuade you of that today and to kind of draw out some of the reasons why it's beneficial to take people from your congregation somewhere. Again, could be Israel, could be Greece and Turkey, could be somewhere right here in the United States. But to start off, I want to read a story from the Bible that will be familiar to everybody. It's the story of the Transfiguration. So this is in Matthew chapter 17, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 8. It says, "And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, 'Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I'll make 3 tents here, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah.' He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him.' When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, 'Rise and have no fear.' And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one, but only Jesus." So there's a lot that can be taken from this story, but I just want to pull out one key point that's important for what I'm talking about today, is that these disciples, Peter, James, and John, had to go somewhere different than where they were previously, up on this high mountain. And they did it together in order to see Jesus in a new way. And another way to put that same idea is that taking people somewhere together was a part of Jesus's method of discipleship. So he brought the disciples up this mountain away from their regular life and the places that they normally found themselves, so that he could reveal himself to them in a new way. Peter says in verse 4, "It is good for us to be here." They had an incredible encounter with Christ, and Moses and Elijah as well. And so in other words, Jesus' method of discipleship, of bringing people somewhere, it works. So why would people not do this? I want to address some of those reasons, because I was a pastor for a while. I was a pastor for probably about 7 years, and I have to confess that I never brought my people anywhere, except for youth group. I think that's probably pretty common, that a lot of times you bring the youth somewhere, but what about the adults? It's valuable as well for them to go somewhere together. And I think there's 2 sets of reasons why we wouldn't do it, and those are practical and theological. And I won't say much about the practical reasons, because the whole reason that I exist is to take away any practical concerns like time and money, how much time it's going to take to put something together. That's the whole reason that I exist. So theological reasons, there's a difference in there's a field within theology called the theology of place. And there's a difference between, fundamentally, Catholic theology of place and Protestant theology of place. Catholic theology for a long time has had this idea that, and they share this with a lot of other religions, that there's certain places that are more holy or more sacred than other places. They're more imbued with the presence of God than other places. And Protestants, rightly, I believe, have rejected that. They say you can come to know God, you can experience Christ no matter where you are, because you know Christ and come to know him better by virtue of the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is everywhere. So you don't necessarily have to go anywhere else in order to experience Jesus in a new way, or come to know him more. At the same time, there is value, though, even within that Protestant view, which I think is the right view. I don't think there's any place that's more holy than any other place intrinsically, but there is still value in following Jesus' method of discipling your people by taking them somewhere else. Just a few resources on this that before I say more, that I've come across and I think have been helpful on thinking through this. There's a book by Jim Forrest called The Road to Emmaus, Pilgrimage as a Way of Life. Another by N.T. Wright called The Way of the Lord, Christian Pilgrimage Today. And Charles Foster has a book called The Sacred Journey, which is also about the value of taking people somewhere on something like a pilgrimage. So a few reasons why is it beneficial in light of this theological discussion. Why, even for those who don't think that certain places are holier than others, why is it still beneficial to take people from your church or who you're leading somewhere together? And I've thought a lot about this because it obviously is beneficial. If you go on, have an experience like this, you won't be able to deny that it is beneficial. But putting your finger on why that's the case is a little bit more difficult. So this is my best thoughts on why it's beneficial. The first is that by taking your people somewhere else, you will remove them from the worries and patterns of their daily life, which can distract them from what God, in some cases, is trying to do in their life. Jesus took the disciples up this mountain, and if we kept reading on, when they come back down the mountain, right away, starting in verse 14, they're confronted with the situation of a demon-possessed boy. So the pressures of regular life and ministry are back on them right away when they come down. It always seems to me like the author is trying to contrast the moment that they had with Jesus in a different place, and then they come back to regular life where things are crazy, and we need both. We need times when we go away together with Jesus, and we need times when we come back into regular life with all of its struggles and trials and just its regular patterns. Secondly, these kind of experiences, when you take your people somewhere from your church or people you're leading, it leads to a deepening of intimacy with each other, the people that are on the group. In other words, it builds Christian fellowship. And as pastors, that's one of the main things that we're striving for is to create Christian fellowship among the people. We don't want people to just come to church and see each other on Sunday and then head out, see you next week. We believe in that the church is supposed to be a family. The church is supposed to do life together. And the church is supposed to know each other on a deep level beyond just what can happen on a Sunday morning or whenever they come to a church service. And so I've seen this happen so many times with groups that we've taken. This is one thing that blew me away when I started doing the work I'm doing now of bringing groups of people from churches on trips, is that I knew some of the benefits that were going to come from it, but I wasn't prepared to see how much it bonded people together and for a long period of time. There's groups of people that I've traveled with years ago that first met each other on a trip of this kind. And years later, 6-7 years later, they're still like this because they're tight, because of the experience that they had together. When you're traveling with somebody, when you go away with other people from your church, you get to know each other on a deeper level. You see each other at your best and at your worst. Peter, when he was on the mountain, he said that thing about, should we build some tents? And I know there's been different suggestions about why he said that, but ultimately he is probably just tired, I think, and he's just waking up. And it's just like that when you're on a trip. You see somebody on the bus first thing in the morning, they're just waking up, they say something stupid or whatever, or something that you laugh about. And so having these kind of encounters with people can really only happen if you do something like this with them. If you're just in church seeing each other once, twice a week, it's very different than traveling with people for 7, 8, 9, 10 days, or going on a retreat or something of that nature with people. The third idea that I was thinking about, as far as this is, I think, the most obvious one, how these types of things, traveling with people, is beneficial, It's just that it gives new insight. This is the one that I always knew was the case. But when you go, for example, to Israel, and if maybe you've been yourself to Israel, or you know other people who have gone, and almost without exception, just using Israel as an example, those who go will say, like, I have insight now into the Bible, into the scriptures that I couldn't have probably gotten any other way. One easy example is when the Bible talks about going up to Jerusalem, and you read that over and over again throughout your life, but then you find yourself on a bus, in this case, riding up literally to Jerusalem, ascending to this higher elevated place. You'll never read the words up to Jerusalem the same way again. You'll have gone up to Jerusalem yourself. So you'll be able to understand the Bible better, your people will, through trips of this nature, through traveling with people, especially to sites that are of biblical significance. And you'll also have a better insight when you come back from trips like this, and the people in your church as well. There's an idea that I've been interested in and kind of reading a little bit about recently in psychology called dishabituation. And the idea behind it is that when we're at home, most things that happen to us in our daily life, most people we see, most things we do, we've become habituated to them. And habituation has a lot of negative effects. It keeps us from joy. The psychologists have shown that because we become so habituated to the things, we don't feel as happy because we don't see the things that could make us happy and what's around us because we're just so used to it. It keeps you from creativity. Psychologists have shown that by dishabituating from what's normal to you, you can see things in a new light. So in other words, when you go on somewhere with people from your church, you remove them from the things that they're used to, the habits that they've formed. When they come back to the same life that they left, they'll be able to see it in a different way and in a fuller way. So again, to kind of summarize, it's not that there's certain places that are more holy than others that we need to go to, but it's that there's a lot of other benefits that come from taking your people somewhere. And ultimately, God honors our efforts to seek Him. And so by doing something like this, when your people decide that they want to be a part of wherever you're taking them, and they see it as a way of seeking God, which it is, God will honor that, and they will have encounters with the Lord in these places that they're going that are oftentimes life-changing. That's been our experience. So we offer to pastors every year. Daniel will be talking about it in a separate segment, I believe. Daniel went on one of them. We offer the opportunity for pastors to come on a familiarization trip to a bunch of different places: Israel, Greece, and Turkey, following in the footsteps of Paul, and we're adding more as well. And the idea behind that is just to have pastors come and experience everything that I've just been talking about for themselves first, and then they can understand the value even better of offering it to their people, the people in their church. So I'd invite you, if you're interested in the idea of taking your people somewhere and using that as part of your discipleship program, that you look into that. Look into coming with us to Israel or Greece and Turkey in 2025. Information's available online for when and where that is, and would love to have you if you're interested in being a part of it. Thanks for letting me share. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless you.
Well, I hope that was a blessing to you of having someone articulate how going to a different place gives you some perspective, and that God actually uses different contexts to minister to you, different environments. And one environment that I want to invite you to is to come on a trip with us, with Christian Expeditions, as EEleaders is going to host a church planning trip for church planners by church planners, the Footsteps of Paul tour, Acts chapter 16 through 20. We're going to be going to Macedonia. That's right, northern Greece and southern Greece, and we're hopping over to Turkey. It's a 9-day adventurous trip. We're going to be learning church planning principles from the Apostle Paul in his second missionary journey, and just going through the Word together, looking at these sites. Macedonia is a beautiful place where you can actually go to northern Italy. It's where the gospel first came to Europe through the Apostle Paul. Are going to see places like Ephesus, hopping on a plane to Turkey while we're over there, and looking at one of the largest geographical archaeological sites that's restored. It's huge, it's amazing, and it's going to be incredible. Listen, if you're drinking the Kool-Aid, I want you to mark these dates down. January 26th through February 3rd, 2026. It's going to be a 9-day trip, and the price is going to be incredible. We got a discount rate through this ministry because they're sponsoring this podcast. They believe in church leaders. They clearly want to help us. They're giving it as this trip at a great discounted rate for you because we want to bless you. And so I would encourage you to sign up quickly, sooner than later. Talk to your spouse. They are welcome to come to be able to come on this trip. We're only going to take one bus and have a lot of ministry friends share the word of God as we venture going through this first missionary journey of Paul and taking our own trip, our own retreat together. I know that's going to be a blessing and encouragement. I'll put the link to this trip in the show notes or on the description on the video. And man, you will be blessed by it. I'm excited to actually meet some of you, to have you come alongside what we're doing, and to be able to connect not only with you, but have you connect with others. And so thank you, Christian Expeditions, for sponsoring this video. Thank you, Trey, for sharing the leadership lesson. And we're going to continue to talk about different environments and how important they are as we go into an interview with Allan Meade. Allan Meade is a church planner here in South Florida, Miami area, where he's having a different model. I'm going to have him speak the next leadership lesson or so in another episode or so. But I did an hour-long interview of talking about creating different spaces, and he has a different model, the microchurch model or house church model of planning a church here in South Florida. He also is a graphic designer, has done some great stuff to help us as a local church design. He has a great business that you could work with him. I'll put his link and description and information below if you're interested in that. But I did again, another interview for Patreon that's available this month that you can enjoy, get more content behind the scenes and interviews of guys and girls like Allan to be able to learn and grow from them. And he has his own design business. He's doing ministry in a different context. And so I thought it would be important for us to, just as we talk about different environments, he's creating a different model, a different environment of starting his launch team with a home and working that out. And so I just had him share a little bit and talk through some of this stuff on an interview that I want to share with you now. And then we'll finish our episode with the last one piece of advice video from a youth pastor, a guy that's doing great work right now in Port Saint Lucie, Andrew, Calvary Chapel, Port Saint Lucie, working with youth and young adults, and how he's creating different spaces to be able to minister to them. And so here is Allan, aka AJ, his interview, a little segment from that, and then we'll get into the one piece of advice. We don't need to go into full detail because you did a great leadership lesson on it. But one of the creative things that you're thinking through and having God call you to is this framework of house churches. Some people call them a microchurch. What made you decide on that model? And then why do you think that model is good for South Florida or planning a church now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so we call ourselves, for the church Influence Miami, we're going to be a church of house churches. And what that means is, like, we're not a church of small groups, we're a church of house churches. And what that's described as, like, a house church is it's decentralized from place or priest, which means it's we're not just a singular house church. We're a group of people, around 12 to 15 people, that should meet in a home. They should focus on community, discipleship, worship, prayer. We believe in sharing a meal together. They should ideally do life on life. It's a vehicle for deep discipleship because relationships go deep. We're not just going to meet in a small group and stay very topical and center everything around hanging out. Like, there will be times for that outside of house church where we can hang out and go, to the gym together or go, play pickleball together, whatever it might be. But house church ideally is a place where you have what we call a house church pastor, someone over you to shepherd that particular flock, go deep with discipleship, and do life on life with you.
Why did you decide to go with that model?
Yeah.
And real quick, to clarify, does a house church just meet in houses, or is that during the week? And then are you meeting on Sundays? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we meet, ideally we want house churches meeting in houses. There's something sacred about a house. There's something, even like a form of like closeness and intimacy where a house is a home for a reason, and also in the Book of Acts it says they met together in their homes. Now, does that mean that they didn't meet at another building? So I do think that you can still accomplish that if people are like, hey, we want to meet together in a house church model, but we don't have a physical house to meet in or an apartment. Can we meet at a workplace break room? Or, I do think there are other places. I personally don't think God put that in his word to be like, you have to stick to just a house, but I think he is showing us that there's a beauty with that. So we do believe that it should take place in a house, ideally. And then we're going to be meeting on a weekday night for house church. And then on Sundays, all the collective house churches come together for corporate worship, corporate prayer, like a typical Sunday gathering. Okay. But we want to intentionally make the Sunday gatherings very simplistic, so that way the emphasis can be put on house church during the week, because we're like, hey, we are a church of house churches, not a Sunday gathering church that just encourages you to join a house church. We're like, no, like house church is who we are, so we really want to make the emphasis on that.
Well, another local leader here in our area in South Florida is Andrew from Pastor Andrew from Port Saint Lucie. He's working with young adults. He's preaching with the young leaders and ministering to them. And he was sharing with me just how he's making space for young adults and creating different environments, and from a big room to a small room, from darker, from a different night, and just these creative ways to make space. And again, a different place gives space for a new perspective. And so I just love how in this principle we can take people to a different country to teach them. We could take them from a Sunday morning to a Sunday night. We could take them from a large gathering to a small gathering. How as church leaders are we creating environments for people to learn? This podcast over video and audio is a different environment for you to learn. I hope that you are learning. I hope that you are getting something out of it. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love for you to make a comment on our social media or email me at daniel@EEleaders.com. Let us know how this ministry is impacting you. And if it is impacting you, share it with your friends. This is free content that we want to give to you, to bless you, to equip you, to encourage you in the work that God's called you to do. And so share it with the friends. Give a rating or review on Spotify or iTunes. It actually does help the algorithm to let more people know about this ministry. And just so blessed to be able to have this time with you, to be able to give you space, whether you're working out or driving, watching, whatever it may be, to come alongside of you and giving you an environment where you can grow and you can learn. And so this is Pastor Andrew with his one piece of advice. I'll come back at the end, give you a last word, and just really appreciate you hanging in there and growing and learning with us. This is an awesome word from Pastor Andrew.
Hey, my name is Andrew Sterken. I am the campus pastor and next gen pastor at Calvary Port Saint Lucie. And here is my one bit of advice. We can control environments. Okay, so I know there's so much in our ministry that we can't control. You can't control when the Spirit of God moves. You can ask and plead and beg, but you can't control that. You can't control when life change happens or decision moments happen, but you can control an environment. And this is something I've learned not only in my ministry, but in my marriage. And so I was talking to a friend of mine named Will Hutcherson, and Will said, hey, I asked him, what's the secret sauce for student ministry? What's one thing that you've learned that changed everything? And he said, creating an environment is the beginning of discipleship. He said, of discipleship, the seed of that is friendship, and if the seed of friendship is conversation, then create a space where conversation can happen, especially for student ministry. And so we started thinking, what's the best place to open up, to share, to be vulnerable? It's not going to be in a hospital, like lighting room. It's going to be in a space with a campfire where everyone can kind of be chill and tight. and have great conversations. So for our student ministry, we bought these LED cubes, which we can recharge and have all the cool different lights, put it in the center of the space, and then students gather around. They can look at that when they're being vulnerable. We doubled our small group time just to have better connection with our leaders. And that environment with soft music and low lighting has created intimacy and deeper friendship and discipleship conversation. God has caused tremendous growth to happen, not only numerically, but in the depth of our students. But this is not just something for ministry. This is also an environment for your marriage. To be completely vulnerable, my entire 10 years of being married, I felt like a failure to be a spiritual leader in my home. I'm like trying to pray through, like, Lord, how do I do this? How do I help lead my wife and my daughter? Like, what does this look like practically? When I first got married, I'd be like, hey, babe, you want to pray right now? And she's like, no, it's midnight. What are you thinking? And she's like almost asleep. And so I learned pretty quickly, like, I've got to create a space and environment where this can happen. And so now what we do is wake up at 7 a.m. every day, no matter what. I am a person who likes to sleep in, so that's early for me. Don't judge me. We wake up at 7 a.m. and we go on, start the coffee pot, unload the dishwasher. Why? Because now we have a space to put dishes in, creates a good environment for my wife who's 6 months pregnant. And then we read our Bibles. We have our coffee, and we have an hour stretch before my daughter wakes up. And my daughter, the environment is you're in your room until we're done having our Devo time. We pray together and we connect. And before that moment, I was trying to, like, hey, how are your devotions coming? And we're hit and miss, and we just didn't have a good environment. But I said, I can control this. I can't control how my wife responds or what God's speaking to me about, but I can control an environment, and that's created space for God to move in my life. And for that, I'm very thankful.
Well, hey, I hope you've learned by now that we can create environments for people to meet Jesus. We need to preach the word. We need to give them that. But you see in Nehemiah, they see the people built a platform so Nehemiah could preach to the crowd. We need to create spaces and create platforms for people to hear God's word and be discipled. And whether that be through a video platform or audio or creating microchurch, a house space, or taking people overseas or going on a conference or retreat, these type of things are super important, and we should be thinking and processing and implementing in our ministry. And so in the next leadership lesson episode number 5, we're going to talk about the microchurch. It's another form of development. Like I mentioned earlier, the interview that I had with Allan, he's planning a church, and he came out of another church being the microchurch leader, developer, director of that ministry, and he wants to start a church using this model. And so I had him give us some training on that. I've also have an old interview that I want to re-release of just a section that I talked with Peyton Jones. He's a church planner, leader as well. He's written a couple of books on church planning and has used this model to reach people for Jesus. Is this the only model or the best model? Maybe not. Of course not. There's multiple models, multiple ways, multiple environments we can do and create, but the attitude is we got to do something to be able to reach people that no one is reaching. And so what are some models? We need to make sure that we have a closed fist on the message. It doesn't change, but the methods do. And so I hope this spurs your conversation. I hope that this helps bring some ideas and ways that you could reach people for Jesus, because man, that's what we want to do. And we want to come alongside of you as a church leader to encourage and to encourage and equip you. Remember, there's nothing better than doing what God has called you to do. So we're praying for the ministry that God has called you to do, no matter what it looks like. And we're going to talk about the creative ways that we can serve the Lord in this season. And so next episode will be about the model of the micro church and what Allan Meade is doing, and a couple of other guys, to reaching people for Jesus and just being faithful to the call that God has called them to do. We'll see you on the next episode.